Hello and welcome to the final night of B Block action in this year's G1, or at least Post Wrestling's review thereof. My name is Bruce Lord, and I am excited to be back in the G1 hot seat with Kate from Montreal for a second time this year. Kate, from my
Indeed.
perspective, it's been you and Eric Marcotte kind of availing yourself of the free birds rule in terms of who I've been kind of tagging in and out with for the bulk of my coverage
hmm
here. Though I will say it was really great to hear you and Karen Peterson get to do a G1
Thank
show.
you.
And as you were both kind of cracking about getting to talk about things a little bit lighter than, institutionalized misogyny in the wrestling business for the last week.
Yeah, that has sort of been our theme. It's like, uh-oh, here come the sad sisters to do a show. But we had a much well, I was going to say a much happier time this year for this year's show. I don't know if I could call it happy because of the shows that we reviewed, but
Yeah.
I would honestly have to say that those shows that we reviewed last week were week before week and a half ago. I'm okay. I can't, okay. Don't be pedantic, Kate. I would say that those were exceptional in that I felt that most of the shows on the G1 so far have had at least some, like, I've had more good to them
hmm
than in the last couple of years. But yeah, so it's.
They tend to hit a little bit of a lull, like, once you hit the halfway mark, things kind of,
Mhm.
there's three or four shows in some of the smaller towns that don't really deliver all of the goods necessarily. But to that end, obviously Eric and I were talking about it yesterday, but do you have any thoughts about the A Block finals?
The I guess I would say like my main thought is the right people got through. That was and I feel like that was the case for all of the semifinalists.
hmm
I'm trying to remember what all of the matches were yesterday. On the A block final, but I I enjoyed it, and yeah, I think, like I said, I think the important thing is that the right people made it through in the
Yeah,
block.
you've got, I think Suji Inoue is a really very strong um half of the semifinals
hmm
to be going in there that acknowledges on the one hand I mean rewarding Suji, I would say, not that
Yeah,
it's a, not that you get points for good work or whatever it is, but I think, having such a strong tournament, it's nice
yeah,
to see him at least
undoubtedly
making it
the
to the semis.
MVP
Yeah, yeah,
of
absolutely.
the G1 this year, and I think an acknowledgement that Oiwa is, I would say, arguably like he's the other guy. Like if you're talking about Suji being the one who's going to be the sort of ace of the company, if you want to call it that, going forward, I think that Oiwa has made a very strong case this year for him being the other, like the one who's going to be his great
hmm
rival, as opposed to, well, we'll get into this later,
Yeah, we'll take a look at
but
who else is going to be coming in on the B block side. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
So
we should note here off of the top that this show is coming out on the free post wrestling feed. So, if you do want a full review of the A block finals that myself and Eric Marcotte did, as well as reviews of every preceding G1 show, featuring Kate, featuring Karen, featuring WH Park, featuring Eric Marcotte, featuring John and Way, featuring myself, not to mention, of course, reviews of the upcoming semis and finals on Saturday and Sunday. You'll have to go to postwrestlingcafe.com, where for just $8 American or 11.50 approximately Canadian, you'll be getting all of the premium cafe content, including those G1 shows, along with XL editions of the Raw, SmackDown, and Dynamite reviews. You have Kate every weekend covering AEW's Collision on Collision Course. You get Rewind Away, the double shot reviews of Dark Side of the Ring, and so much more, including something that might be coming up in pretty much just a little over a week's time, Kate.
hmm indeed, which will feature you and I once again. Always a pleasure. We will be doing a post-show review of Ring of Honor: Death Before Dishonor. One of the they only do about three pay-per-views per year, but and the last one was a little bit underwhelming. Have
And too long,
hopefully
too long.
this one makes for
I mean, look,
it.
it's
Yes.
the TK verse. We're like it's just it's a cliche,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, as the two people within the Post family, uh, uh, let's say perverse enough to stick with all of the ROH TV. That's mine and Kate's beat. Happy to
Yes.
do that with
Yeah.
you.
AEW is for the sickos, ROH is for the perverts. Like, is that what we're
Yes,
going
yeah,
with here?
let's go with that. That works as an analogy. Um, We're in Korakuen Hall earlier today, obviously filling the hall up with the 1494 technically on the dot. Really just a case of how many extra chairs they set up, but this was a sellout as you would expect for block finals. I will quickly run through the multi-man matches that happened before getting into the actual kind of framework for possibilities for the B block finals that we finished with today. Kate, I'm assuming you did not watch the multi-mans.
I scanned through them and that is about it. I would say normally I'm not super interested in the multi-man matches. I think that's been even more the case this year. I think that they don't normally feel super consequential. I found that they felt less consequential this year. I don't know. That's just
Yeah,
my
they're
headspace.
they've kind of been par for the course. The fact that 99% of the time it has been one of the effective, like young boys, young lions, lost posts, whatever you want to call them, the
Yeah.
seconds, let's say. It
Mhm.
has been the non-tournament contenders who have been deciding the falls. That's at least been something of note to it. But yeah, these are not essential viewing. Off the top, we had Masatori Yasuda teaming with the ignominiously eliminated Oleg Bolton last night. Um, Going up against
Hey, I don't
Hiroki.
think I don't think he can complain about the tournament that he has had, though.
No, no,
I
no, no, no,
think
no, no.
that
Didn't end well, but a fantastic,
no,
fantastic showing from Bolton.
yeah, I did not expect him to go through. I don't think it's a mistake that he missed out like to Tsuji and Oiwa, but yeah, he's certainly one of the people who I think has been the most elevated this year by the G1.
Yeah. And I think, if we're looking at spacing things out from the G1 to Wrestle King W, you can absolutely expect, that challenge
Hmm.
of Suji for the title coming out of his wonderful, wonderful defeat
Yeah,
of Suji. That's something I
100%.
am more than happy to rewind in a
Yeah,
main event. And
that
then I think
might have been my
also
favorite match in the tournament.
it's
It's up
very, very
there.
high up there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just wonderful. I think I'm still going it with my favorite at this point. Yeah. Um, anyway, we had him and Yasuda going against Goto and Tetsuya Matsumoto off the top. Decent showing from all four. It's Korakuen, so the volume and heat's being turned a little bit up after some of the slower days. Goto puts Yasuda down with an Ushi Goroshi. Up next, six-man tag between Konosuke Takeshita, Tasei Nakahara, and Toriyano taking on Sanada, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Sho. Of all of the juniors who sat this tour out, we got to get Sho on at the end. Sure,
I'm
fine.
just thinking of like those six names. It's like if you had told me a couple of years ago that that was a match during a G1 block final show, I would have assumed you were having a stroke. Like I think I probably would have called the hospital. Like
Yeah, yeah,
come
no.
and get this person. Their brain cells have clearly started misfiring.
I mean, Konosuke Takeshita has a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm sure his head is on too much of a swivel to ever really stop and think about the like, wait, I'm teaming with Toru Yano against, a possibly baby-faced Sonata in the House of Torture,
Hmm.
plus, the usual crap in Sho and Yoshino and Kanemaru. Anyway, a whole lot of Yano grab
Poor
ass.
show.
And then Takeshita overpowering the House of Torture before Sho ultimately pins Nakahara with a straight jacket pile driver, comparatively clean by House of Torture standards, I guess. Sure. Um, Up next, another six-man between the Great Okan, we'll get to him in a second, teaming with United
Must
Empire's
we?
young boys, Jacob Austin Young and Zane J, taking on the Unbound Company trio of Shingo Takagi, Yuto Ice, and Taiji Ishimori. Kate, I was chatting with a few other New Japan diehards online last night after the A
Hmm.
Block finals about how far back you have to go in the annals of the G1 to find a worse overall tournament performance than we got from the Great Okan this year. The highs of this tournament were so damn high. Oleg, Oiwa, Suji,
Yeah.
Yudo Ice, like all of these highs, but the
Mhm.
lows were
In very
so
different
low.
ways. Like you can
Oh
say
yeah.
like Ice is a great example of he's not the best technical wrestler. He's usually not even the best technical wrestler in his match, but he's just made magic by creating this incredibly lovable babyface character who you want to get behind even when he's going up against people who are much better in the ring than he is. And then you go to Okan. I always sort of keep a ledger in my head when I'm watching the G1 of who is elevated by the tournament, who is left on the same level, and who is diminished
Yeah.
by it. And I would say that in the last few years, unfortunately, that diminished list has been much longer than it should have been. I'd say this year, there's very few people who feel worse coming out of this than they did going in, but Okan has to be at the top of that. Like, just
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
somehow, yeah. Like, to me, it's like the three who really seem to be lesser coming out than going in would be Okan, Zack Sabre Jr., and Ren Narita. And
mhm,
like
mhm.
even I'd say someone like Jake Lee, expectations were very low and he met them. But Okan, it's like I didn't expect much, and it's still so much worse than
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the protest sign. Like our expectations for you were low, but Jesus, like
Jesus.
that's
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's what we're getting here. I dug all the way back into some of my like grapple ratings that you can still access. The app is defunct, but you can still look at your ratings. Um, I think you have to go back to Bad Luck Fale in 2022 to come up with an actual like set of G1 matches I would uh rather watch or less rather
And
watch
and
than
think of
than
the
Okan's
different
2026.
think of the different points those men are at in their careers. Like Fale
Yes.
in 2022, you're already talking someone who is way beyond his prime. This is someone whose ceiling was never all that high, but who like clearly was in the latter part of a career by 2022. Great O'Connor feels like he should be like this is given the amount of time that he's been with the company and the level that to which he's been pushed, it feels like he should just be in a much higher position than he is. Or it's at this point, like if he's not going to be, then let him go. Like
I yeah,
he
I
could probably thrive
it's
at like Noah or ultimately
throw him to Gleat. I don't
or
care. Over to
yeah,
DDT. I'm yeah, no, like
DDT. Yeah, this is
it's New Japan, so lifers have the
mm,
corporate culture is different there and everything like that. Guys who are trained by the dojo guys have a job for life, as we see with Yujiro. But yeah, I mean, if we're to read anything into Yoda Suji's comments about Okan's overall performance and where his priorities are, I think there's a lot of truth hidden in a lot of shoot hidden in the work of Suji's comments there. So
mm,
yeah, no, I mean like a couple of years ago, Okan was still having decent to pretty fun matches with the likes of like Shingo and Tai
mhm.
Chi. When those guys decide to actually show up for the KOPW, the silly belt that they had there, they'd have fun little never style matches with that. But yeah, you're right. Like, Fale was slotted in the spot that Fale was slotted in. Okan has just turned from somebody who's been kind of a quirky oddity into somebody
Mhm.
that I actively want out of one of the promotions that I spend most of my time watching. So brutal,
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of this actual match, it was nice to see that Jacob Austin Young was in it. I was a little bit worried that he might be a scratch after tweaking his knee in last night's multi-man. The crowd was very hot for Yudo Ice in this. He gets the fall on Zane J after a spin kick and indicates to Okan that he and OSKAR will be coming for the tag titles, which Okan still holds with Henare. Lots more about Henare to come. Last multi-man is a tag between Hartley Jackson and Ryo Heoiwa versus Daiki Nagai and Yoda Tsuji. So our two A block winners being given the illustrious last multi-man spot. Thus potentially we are on paper looking at maybe a preview of the finals that we might get on Sunday, or dare I speculate, the Tokyo Dome main event. I don't know. That's a lot to dream on. Ryohei Oiwa making it
But
all the
it's
way to
out
the
there.
Tokyo Dome main
It's
event, but it is out there.
it's in it's certainly in the realm of possibility. At this point, I think with Oiwa and with most of the sort of new generation, what they have to prove is that they can put butts in seats.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the
I mean, Oiwa getting a headlock over the course of a month, says something about that. It's tough to tell, but it does sound like Oiwa has a bigger portion of the crowd behind him in his sequence with Tsuji. He's of course working on the aforementioned headlock, and he hits a Tenzan suplex in anticipation of Tenzan's retirement on Saturday. Nagai is able to spinebuster the big man Jackson before Jackson power bombs him for the pinfall. So, going into your actual block business, we only have 4 men in the B block entering tonight's matches with a chance to cinch playoff spots. Yuya Uemura, Callum Newman, Ren Narita, and Gabe Kidd, each of them enter with 10 points and have a chance to go to 12. Yes, Drilla Maloney is credited with beating Shota Umino in a forfeit, but he finishes with 10 points after today's forfeit accreditation, so he is out. Yes, on paper, if you had 3 no contests and a bunch of other things, you could come up with some unbreakable nightmare ties, but let's be pragmatic. That's not going to be happening. So with 3 matches of consequence of actual playoff consequence of the 4 B block matches that we had today, you have 8 possible outcomes. Again, barring time limits and no contests. Basically, to summarize, when you take all of the tiebreakers that people hold into account, what I can tell you is that Uemura advances in 3 of those 8 scenarios. Newman advances in 4 of those 8. Narita advances in 4 of those 8. And Kidd advances in 3 of those 8. So all 4 of those men very much in play, and each other's
so yeah.
matches having an impact on the others.
So yeah, you go in where it's not just that it's tight in terms of the points that you could get, but also in terms of how the tiebreakers are allocated. Like this was like G1 math is always fun. This was a particularly well done scenario, I thought. But because they lost a major player, this is like good recovery on their part.
Yeah, and I think with if I'm remembering correctly, with the order that the matches played out, no one man ever actually, held his own destiny in his hands before the first match had actually started, right? Everybody was dependent upon at least one tiebreaker in order to get in. But before we get to that, we have the match that is of no larger consequence. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Aaron Wolf. Both men sit at 8 points. But I would say this was the match I was most excited about actually watching as a bell-to-bell experience tonight. Really one of the most intriguing solo matches, I think, of Aaron Wolf's career up until this point, given the obvious stylistic differences, but also the potential similarities between his style and Zack's. I don't know if you were as excited about this as I was.
I think that looking at this, the first thing that occurred to me, and this is very much how it played out, was, okay, this is going to be a really good look about what technical professional wrestling is, as opposed to like the technical style of martial arts, of judo, because it's something where Zack is almost presented as he's a bit more of like a pure wrestler or they're like not martial artist exactly, but that you would expect that he is kind of cut from the same cloth as an Aaron Wolf. Of course he's not. And you got to see like how different those things were, but also how they mesh together here. Yeah, this was, I credit them with deciding to, like, I think it was a good decision to put this on the last day, because if both guys were going to be eliminated, this is the match you want to see them do at the end. It's like, okay, this one's just going to be fun. Like it's a match that's worth seeing, even though it has no consequence in terms of the rankings.
Yeah,
interesting series of decisions going into that, but okay.
yeah, but no, I think it really gave, like, to your point about like Zack feeling a little bit diminished coming out of this. Yes, he is in terms of the points and whatnot, but I think this does give him something to work with moving forward. As we'll get into it, this is a rematch I'd absolutely be happy to see. But given that there is no real G1 stakes involved in this, Chris Charlton on English commentary informs us that Zack has proposed, given Wolf's judo background and that Wolf knows his judo
Mm-hmm.
well, that Zack has proposed that the loser has to purchase the winner a succulent Chinese meal. So there you go. If you know, you know. For his part, Wolf takes his boots off before the match actually begins, underlining a loose gentleman's agreement to have something of a grappling contest at least to start.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, both men look really in their element in the early going. Wolf scores the first two takedowns with a trip and then a shoulder throw, which would have been a full point and a win if this was a judo match. Zack is going for arm and wrist work. I've been watching a lot of Big Mouth Loud of late, and like, yeah, you could kind of in the opening stages of this, flash back 20 years to whichever Shuto promotion you might have been a fan of in Korakuen, some of which was happening, before Aaron Wolf was even born, Rings, UWF, Pancrase, whatever. And again, if we're talking about this, being on the last night working out, having this in Korakuen also really works out because this is it's an educated, smarky crowd that understands, the background of both guys and the traditions of shoot style in pro wrestling that they're both drawing on. And they're really reacting to and tracking all of these technical spots that they're working through in the first opening phases of this. However, Zack is the first to really blink away from the pure grappling about 5 minutes in with some forearms. Wolf's replies is still pretty soft looking. He's still a little bit gun shy about really laying forearms in. And that's something that we see a lot with, MMA fighters moving over to pro wrestling, learning to actually pull their punches is something that I imagine is very, very difficult for them. Wolf tosses his way out of an octopus, but Zack uses his wrist hump to further zero in on the arm. Zack is really going full heel here, shit talking and flicking some kicks at a prone Wolf. Wolf slaps his way into an elbow drop on the back and then a delayed vertical suplex. Zack is staying on the arm with an octopus. He's shooting for a triangle. Wolf counters that into a power slam. He has a head and arm choke and turns that into a Uranagi when Zack fights out, and he is able to get the choke reapplied. A couple of slaps from Zack prompt a flurry of wrist throws from Wolf. Again, forearms maybe not so strong, so fine. If we're doing a little tit for tat, I'll just go for wrist throws. Zack replies with the Zack driver and shoots for an armbar. He turns that into a Fujiwara and then grabs the second arm. It looks as though we're maybe going to have one of those submissions where Zack manages to tangle up all of the limbs, but there's a great reaction from the crowd as Wolf is able to make it to the ropes just with the two arms trapped 15 minutes in. A big landslide gets Wolf a 2 count. He then goes for the angle slam, which he has been using as a finisher. However, Zack is able to slither out of the angle slam position, down for a roll-up and a cradle to pin Wolf in 15 minutes and 44 seconds. Did this deliver on the Styles Make Fights premise that all of this was built upon for you, Kate?
I did enjoy this one. I think, unfortunately, you were in a position where it didn't really matter who won, but whoever lost was gonna feel, eh. I do think that this match made a great, it made a good showcase for Aaron Wolf is getting the hang of this wrestling thing.
Yeah.
And that, like, he was able to, yes, incorporate his usual moveset, but you saw signs, that he is, he is picking up on, like you said, the pulling the punches thing still needs work, but there were moments where he was able to create real drama that I quite like that, you're referring to, like, where Zack had like both of the arms kind of tied up and Wolf is like dragging himself to the ropes. It's like, okay, that's a good moment, and that's not something like it sounds easy enough to do, but you see guys all the time they do spots like that and it doesn't seem that interesting. He made it feel like it was a
Mm-hmm.
big accomplishment for him to get out of that predicament. He's getting better at sort of selling himself to the audience. Like if we were talking about like getting a headlock over is a big move, getting a judo like an arm throw is also an accomplishment, and he has done that, like that series, the snap sort of takeovers. The audience really liked those, and so I think that well, I already went through all of this with Karen, but if they had been pairing him with people like this 6 months
Yep.
ago, he would be in a very different position. But he's not, so okay. He comes out of the G1. He doesn't feel like he's one of the top guys in the company, but he definitely feels like he's in a better position than he was. And this match helped a bit, would have helped more if he'd won, but
It's
it's
giving
okay.
Zack a little bit of something given, his
Yeah.
his record coming out of this. But
as as I said, like neither of these guys was going to gain much from the win. It's a little something. The loss feels more substantial in a way.
and it also like it's like I said, like this immediately set up a like look, this is if this is what Zack ends up doing, as a rematch, at Wrestle
Yeah,
Kingdom or something like that, I'm absolutely or at a show even
I'm
before then, absolutely have
happy
to
to
see
watch
this
it again.
rewound. Yeah, I
Hmm.
thought after after a tournament that had, I mean, it had some absolutely great highs, with your Olegs and your Sujis and
Hmm.
Oiwas and everything like that. But when so many of the lows were so repetitive, just seeing something this refreshing and distinct
Yeah,
on the last night of block
exactly.
tournament play was really, really
Hmm.
nice. Great selling from Wolf, both guys, but really good selling from Wolf.
Yeah.
If we're talking about what parts of pro wrestling he has and hasn't figured out, yeah, and again, to be a broken record, like he continues to prove that when he is in there with actual pro wrestlers having pro wrestling matches, he looks good to great. And I would say
Hmm.
that this beats out the Maloney match for my favorite singles Aaron Wolf match to date. If we're still doing the gimmicky rating systems here on the last night of block action, I'd go with a 4-star dram of Glenn Farkless on this. I really like this, but again, maybe that's just because I've been watching more shoot style stuff than I normally would. Anyway, like I said, no larger block ramifications. So we move on to the first of the three matches, which does really matter outside of, who's picking up the tab at the Dragon Inn. And that's Gabe Kidd versus Ren Narita. Each man obviously has 10 and a chance to play in. These guys did have a really good New Japan Cup match just last year and a perfectly cromulent G1 match back in 2023, both of which were won by Kidd. In theory, the potential on paper is there for there to be a good wrestling match here, but it's 2026 and Narita, like most of House of Torture, looks very checked out. So, really, if we're kind of talking about the clash of styles or the similarities but differences in the previous match, that's really what I was looking for here. Was how was a fairly smarky Korakuen crowd going to react to each of these guys in this heel dynamic, and how would they elect to work around the very obvious heel playbooks, but different heel
I
playbooks that both guys have turned to.
I will say that if you're Gato, if you're booking this for New Japan, your entire purpose here is to get the crowd looking at Narita saying, he's an asshole, but he's our asshole. Like that's the what they should. You want them being on his side, and I would like already like the second they came out and you see that crowd reacting so well to Kid, like, oh, you're gonna have to work for this one. Like,
Hmm.
this is
This
gonna
was
take some doing.
this was one where like the miking of the crowd and trying to tune into that crowd energy made for just a whole other dynamic, and like that
Hmm.
was the real struggle for me, was the crowd
Hmm.
struggling with itself in this sure, we'll technically call it a wrestling match, but anyway, Kid is able to bait Narita into brawling on the outside before the bell. The crowd is responding to this as we get a mess of chair shots from Kid. And to your point, it really kind of looks like we're getting an odd, not quite a mirror version or a remix or a variation, let's say, on the we have a House of Torture member versus somebody who is a perceived outsider dynamic that, of course, we saw infamously in the Evil Takeshita semifinals last year. Last year, you got the sense that this was an accident, that the crowd turning on Takeshita and going for Evil was an accident. Here, to your point, this seemed by design. This was Gato learning from last year, and hoping or anticipating that the crowd would get eventually behind Narita, as they did.
I think
Um,
a lot of work by Kid too. Like
well,
he
this is
did
the thing.
whatever he did a lot to make sure the crowd hated him, because I think that he had a sense of like, oh, they're responding too well to me. Let me turn around and like spit at them and flip them off, and like let me make sure that I am keeping this dynamic in place.
Yeah, this really spoke more to the success of Gabe Kidd on this tour and in this one brouhaha, let's call it, rather than just, the cost that really waffling and kind of doubling back and kind of, trying to be half pregnant with Takeshita's presentation last year that just really ended up kind of snake biting the whole thing. Sorry, that was like five metaphors in one sentence there. But anyway, uh, these two guys are just going all around. You're getting the grand tour of Korakuen Hall here. We're up to the high bleachers. 5 minutes into them brawling, there's still been no bell. Kid is about to pile drive Narita on the concrete when Kid is saved by the House of Torture clown car coming up the ramp behind him. And if the Larry David, the Larry David reaction gif, of him standing there kind of being, I'm not sure how to feel about this, sort of that, if that reaction gif had a sound, it would be the sound of Korakuen reacting
Yeah.
to Togo and Sho running in here to murk Kid.
Well, this is, you really didn't have to do much to keep the crowd on side with Narita, but geez, like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, this very much babyfaced him, because it's not even like they came out and were sort of distracting him or something. Like, Togo comes out with the garrote. He's like, okay, no,
Yep.
we're gonna go full on. And so you saw everyone kind of going like, well, that doesn't seem very sporting.
Yeah.
And again, goes back to, Gabe turns this around after a couple of minutes, but like, why would you do this? It was so unnecessary. Like, yeah, okay, it's what House of Torture does, but maybe they don't need to be doing it here, or at least like just don't have them be that cartoonishly evil about the interference. No pun intended.
They're
Like,
gonna dance with what brought them. I think
yeah,
it is, yeah. But
but it's just like
they've forgotten
in a
how to do anything else
situation
at this point.
in a
All of the
situation
guys.
where all you want is to stop the crowd from cheering Gabe Kidd, you want them to hate him. Don't give them any excuse to move away from that
Yeah.
reaction.
Yeah, yeah. And to that point, you then have Kid kind of like rallying and fighting against the odds. Togo and Sho set up a table, but Kid rallies. I mean, this is a dude fighting against a 3-on-1 fight here, and he power bombs Narita through the tables. And kind of sends him cascading down the ramp up to the upper aisle of Korakuen. So yeah, Kid fighting against the odds does get some of the crowd on side with him here. It is still a generally negative reaction as he
Hmm.
drags Narita's corpse into the ring. The bell is rung about 8 minutes after this brawl has started. But the second the bell rings, Narita low blows Kid and hits the double cross. Are we going to get an 8-second G1 match? No. Gabe kicks out at 2. Gabe then uses the ref, shoves the ref to crotch Narita on the top rope when Narita is going up for the Hell's Guillotine, and 2 drill-a-hole pile drivers give Gabe Kidd the win, technically in 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Immediately on the mic afterward, Gabe Kidd congratulates Shota Umino on his illustrious G1 run. Of course, cut short after one match. I love when real world stuff is played upon and drawn upon in this sort of way, if it's rooted in just one guy hating another guy. And I love how just the very legit hatred between Kid and Umino keeps paying off. But that's Kid setting himself up presumably for business afterwards. Who knows, obviously, what Umino's programming coming out of this tournament would have been, but it makes sense for Kid to be doing that. um if off the top, as you're saying there, the brief was keep Gabe Kidd over as this, like, nuclear heat outsider AEW mercenary, did they succeed by that measure in whatever you want to call this schmoz?
Yeah, more or less. Again, this is on him. He is one of the best at making himself hated, and that's a skill. I but I would say, look, this match was just such a nothing. It was, and it confirmed it confirmed every bit of anxiety that I have that Narita has just been left in the dust by the people he came up with. Like having someone in this role, you know that they're not going to get the opportunities to grow their wrestling style. Like what they're doing now with Aaron Wolf, where they're allowing him to fight with guys who are really good in the ring and can help him improve as a wrestler. They're doing the exact opposite with Narita, and I think that that's probably going, like, you know, he's ultimately just not going to be able to hang with the other major guys.
Yeah.
So, what you're thinking with Narita is fine. You're not going to do like you're not going to have him be a top tier wrestler. Like at first I thought maybe putting him with House of Torture, they were going to have him sort of introduce more wrestling into their game. But no.
He's just doing
So,
the evil shtick, but worse. He's worse. He
yeah, well,
doesn't have
that's
the
the thing.
charisma
Like
that
he
evil
does
has.
not.
But yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like this. So this tournament really was more of a test to see if he can fully take on this mantle as the guy in charge of House of Torture. And no, he can't. Like he does not have evil's presence. He feels like
No.
a nothing. And yeah, like the crowd not wanting to get behind him or having to be pushed to stay behind him, I guess more is more accurate, is is a really damning judgment on his positioning within the company. He's not up to this like House of Torture thing. If you're gonna make him the leader, the only way to have this work would be to have him reshape the group somewhat. But they're trying to do Evil's group without Evil, and it's not working.
Yeah, no, this, I mean, I think we all just kind of have to like bury Narita in our hearts and resign ourselves like this is as much as we are ever getting out of him. But yeah, he's, whether you put much credence in the somewhat conspiracy theory that him kind of going along with Shibata going into business for himself and saying, no, 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 I'm having an actual match with you here in Wrestle Kingdom against the company's wishes. The conspiracy theory is that that is what kind of put Narita in the doghouse. But anyway, whether you buy that or not, he's very much collateral damage in Gato just, Xeroxing and re-Xeroxing the Bullet Club formula to diminishing returns. Speaking to diminishing returns, yesterday with Eric, I was talking about how the Kid and Uemura match last night kind of suffered from crowd brawling overkill over the course of the whole tour. Like that was a match that
Mm-hmm.
really made a virtue of like Gabe wants to brawl in the crowd, Uemura does not, and like there's
Mm-hmm.
something to work with there. Um, this here was a very different version of that. Would this have been better and more intense without all of the mediocre crowd brawling that we got from Narita and Lee and Okan over the course of the tour? Maybe, but this was so stupid and over the top, plus just the weird vibes of the crowd struggling with themselves about how to feel about this. And the fact that it ended up, again, you kind of have to almost set Narita aside here and say, like, this ended up being a referendum on Gabe Kidd as, nuclear heat, outsider, crass crude, yada yada, all of that. Um, by that measure, it did work. I can't say this was good. I can't say, I can't
Yeah.
give this any sort of a star rating. Was this the G1? No, not really. If I'm to make a terrible tortured whiskey comparison here, I would say a couple of years ago, a bunch of Fireball malt beverage gas station minis were sold, and were at the center of a lawsuit because they erroneously indicated that they were whiskey on the labels when actually they were not technically whiskey and could not
Whiskey.
legally be sold as whiskey. There was loss out of that. Is this the G1? No. Is it real whiskey? No, it is not. But would I ever want to have more than one shot of it? Hell no. But as an occasional impulsive bad decision, a little bit of this can be fun
It
sometimes.
it to me, I would say, was a good an object lesson that you could use in a school of this is how you do good character work as a heel, and this is how you fail.
Yep. Yeah. And to that end, I know that obviously there's the visa issues going on and everything, but like Kid being this heel in New Japan just feels a lot more productive than like what would he just be like the third dog in AEW or the second dog in AEW right now? Like who's to
Well, I
say?
would
But
I would assume that he's going to be at All In. Like I think that they're sort of moving
oh
to
yeah,
towards some sort of group match, and clearly there's no visa issue with him performing
no,
there. Yeah, I think that he's had a much yeah, exactly, like he has had a much more productive summer than he would have otherwise. Now the thing with him is that Tony Khan very clearly likes him. So I'll be curious to see what happens with that faction when he's in there, because
yes, yes,
literally since the match with Kenny, like he made his first AEW appearance very shortly after that, and not just as a match. He was given promo time. Like this is someone I'll be curious to see
yeah.
as I said, what happens with that faction when he's back, because it strikes me he's the one that Tony sees more in.
Yes, yeah, and we kind of have to rebook everything and reimagine what the last few months would have been like for the dogs. But
Yeah.
one way or the other, coming out of this, Narita is obviously out. Now, Gabe Kidd needs either Henare to beat Newman or OSKAR to beat Uemura in order to cinch a spot in the semis. However, now at this point, if Henare and OSKAR both win, Kid advances with 12, and then we have a nightmare morass of 7 dudes with 10 points. So you knew that was not happening. We were not having the two underdog spoilers winning both of their matches to finish things out. So with that, we move on to Uemura versus OSKAR. OSKAR is out with 8 points. Uemura has 10. With Narita losing, again, to the whole point about nobody controlling their destiny at the outset. But now, having with Narita having lost, a win by Uemura guarantees him one semifinal spot. I was talking with Eric yesterday about the simplicity of the babyface heel dynamic in the match that Uemura had with Kid. And again, in my head, going into this, I'm like, there's a pretty easy to imagine blueprint for how a successful version of this match would go. Really, the only qualm with the heel face dynamic in this, if we're talking about it with the previous match, the only qualm here is that like OSKAR has emerged as New Japan's biggest babyface in the eyes of everybody who has been listening to English commentary, and how he has just been savaging, the booking of the Great Okan, the refs, and
Well,
everything else.
I think
Speaking
that
truth to
also
power. Yeah.
OSKAR, yeah, OSKAR has been all of us on commentary. Like
Yeah.
he is like the voice of the little guy out there, and I don't know what the hell is going on. It's been delightful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Man should not be buying a pint, in any pub that has New Japan fans in it from here on out. After that turn, um, but yeah, the dynamic here is going to be pretty straightforward, and they set about delivering it right off of the top. OSKAR stomps away at Uemura from behind before Uemura can even get his robe off. He's bodying Uemura around the ring, kneeling on his neck and chest, choking him across the rope, hitting a big boot and working his camel clutch. OSKAR is just obviously leaning into the monster heel roll. A missed leg drop from him lets Uemura get some breathing room in with an arm drag and a drop kick. After tricking OSKAR into flying through the ropes to the outside, Uemura kind of abandons the technique with just a flailing plancha to the outside. A scoop slam has Uemura shooting for an armbar. 10 minutes in, he's gotten a little bit of arm work in before, but now he's really going for it. He keeps working the arm while standing as well. He's trying to soften OSKAR up for the deadbolt as part of the insinuation here. However, all of that arm wrenching that he's doing puts him in position for the counter from OSKAR, the Nightmare Sleeper. OSKAR tries to cinch that in by spinning Uemura down. However, he has to drop him. He can't hold the sleeper after spinning him with all of the arm work. Uemura is back to the wrist lock, holding it even as OSKAR tries to slam him. He takes OSKAR to the ground with the lock twice before OSKAR is able to break it by tossing Uemura into the ropes. Uemura again tries to grapple into deadbolt position. OSKAR is fighting back out of the clinch with elbows. Uemura settles for a bridging German for 2. OSKAR gets a modified choke slam as Uemura is trying to fight out of the sleeper again. OSKAR screams after hitting a jumping sleeper. That's not a thing. I'm not sure what I was going
But
for there.
now I want to know what it is.
Uh,
Jumping
that was
sleeper.
It was I can't. I apologize. I've
Anyway.
forgotten in my notes here what the setup move was for his sit out power bomb that he is going for. However, Uemura has the answer to the attempt at the power bomb in a Rana, and then he transitions out of that Rana immediately into an armbar, which gets a quick submission from OSKAR in 17 minutes and 25 seconds. The result of this one, I thought, was pretty predictable. After Kid's win, I was pretty sure we were not going to get both Kid and Newman through. But the work was good. Uemura was very sympathetic, working within the basic structure, keeping the target on the arm and having to survive the monster. Healthy 3.5-star pour of Highland Park 12 from me, Kate.
I thought this was good. I thought OSKAR was leaning a little too much into the heel behavior
Oh, really?
because he is not. Yeah, like, it was fine, but it seemed like, particularly near the beginning of the match, he was just really going for it. Like, I'm the bad guy. Like, except that you're not really, and your tag partner is this giant baby face that they've created. So this felt, I don't think it did him any harm. It just felt a little bit like inauthentic in a way, and particularly having heard him on commentary and having, but look, it's fine. It's fine. I do not think that this was a disaster by any means. I think that maybe it speaks to the fact that Yuya is just of this, again, the sort of new wave of wrestlers in New Japan. Uemura may be the best actual wrestler, but they still, it's like what? It's like looking at a big puzzle and seeing that there's a piece missing right at the center and you're not quite sure where it is or what it, like, there is something, maybe it's just me, that is just, it's not connecting as much as it should be. He feels that for the caliber of wrestler that he is, you and I talked about this the last time we were doing a G1 show together, there's something about him that's just not there yet. Like, he doesn't have Tanahashi's charisma, no matter how much they
Yeah.
want to sort of make him up as the second coming of Hiroshi Tanahashi. He doesn't have this sort of the cool factor that Tsuji seems to. He doesn't have Oiwa's very distinctive move set. Like, it's just, he's not there yet. And so as a result, I think it helped that OSKAR was being as heelish as he is, because I don't know if Yuya is this overwhelming baby face if someone isn't being like that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
I would agree. I think at this point, Uemura's best matches have either been like very pure sporting babyface versus babyface for the love of the lion mark. We all bleed cerulean blue affairs, like my beloved match that he had with Oiwa in last year's
Oh
G1.
God, yes, yeah.
Oh
Brilliant.
God, I love that match.
Yeah.
Or, very extreme heel face dynamics like the one with Kid and like that one here.
Mhm.
I in terms of OSKAR, like, I know what you mean in terms of the larger positioning of the Knockout Brothers, but I think this year's G1 has given both guys a little bit of a chance to kind of get their own feet from under them,
Mhm.
and for them to sort of suss out who they each are as individuals, rather than this very kind of like, well, they're generationally together, so we're sending them off on excursion together, let them figure it out. And it's like, okay, one of
Yeah,
you one
it's
of
like
you is tall
the
and the other
guy's
like
like
shaggy. I don't, what is going on here?
the guy, like, these are the two guys that you would not picture hanging out together in
No,
high school. Just really,
no,
like, you just buy
no.
weed from the same dealer or something. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna. The thing with OSKAR is more. It's a minor criticism. It just
Yeah.
did stand out for me at the beginning of the match. But yeah, I would like going on my system of who feels elevated versus who doesn't. OSKAR definitely feels like he's not to a huge extent, but he feels like
Yeah.
he's coming out of this G1 better than he went in. Uemura to me feels at exactly the same level. It's just he's like all it, and it's not that he hasn't had some really. It's not that hasn't had some from very good
Yeah.
matches. It's just I know that he is the incipient future. It's just I don't know. I need
I
to
know
find
what you
that
mean.
puzzle piece.
Yeah, it's not nearly as egregious as it is, and not as flailing as it has been with Umino over the years. But I do remember
No,
when he like
no.
came back with like, "Oh, I'm in just five guys, and I'm the Heat Storm," and I'm like, neither of those things really tell me much about this guy in terms of character and presentation. I still think there is something to work out there. What I will say is that he's kind of been the beneficiary of kind of a lot of like the bottom of the barrel attempts at heel heat in this promotion, right? You know, like if you need, I mean, not that anybody deserves to be paired with House of Torture or anything like that, but at least when he's going against Kid or when Oscar decides to monster it up. And to the point about Oscar on commentary, like his commentary indicates that he understands what a heel's job actually is and isn't, right? He's in part
Yep.
complaining because nobody benefits. The baby faces do not benefit from, the walk and brawl with Great Khan. And that at least for this night, like he's somebody who really understands what his role as the monster heel
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
should be. And in that regard, I am reminded of another deceptively intelligent monster we used to see in the G1 and on English commentary, Lance Archer, who once
Oh yes.
famously said that, like, he was kind of like, he felt like he was spinning his wheels in G1, or excuse me, in New Japan when he first arrived after the WWE stint, until Gato was just like, more monster.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
we have Oscar doing that here.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
The sort
I
of
mean,
the thinking man's monster is a good role to have it. Yeah. Like I could definitely see
yeah.
Oscar taking that on over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, obviously, he'll be going back with Yudo Ice, presumably for an attempt to regain the tag titles. And, I think you'd be crazy to think about breaking the team up anytime in the near future. But you are getting at least some sense of who each of these guys are as standalone singles and what they can do on their own. So with that, we move on to our main event, Henare versus Callum Newman. At this point, if Newman wins, he is in first place in the B block, and Uemura is second. If Henare wins, or if there is a tie, Uemura wins the block, and Kid advances in second place. So those are our stakes heading in here. It's not an all play in. We didn't. I mean, I think this was ended up being smart. That they did not have. Um, Kid versus Narita as your main event, as the two guys who might have been in a play-in position. That would have been a nightmare of a main event. But anyway, this is a first-time singles match. Again, Henari's at 8, Newman's at 10. There was a bit of a thread in the preview tag last night of Newman sort of almost wanting to treat this as an exhibition, not taking Henare seriously, that he almost was like thinking of treating it. Is it a friendly, as they call it in footy, Kate? Is
It
that, am I
is.
getting
It
the
is.
the footy?
That is
Yep,
the
yep,
correct
all right,
term. Yep. Hmm.
yep, yep. Um, the chance of somebody in your own faction playing spoiler isn't new in New Japan, but we've seen that with a lot of House of Torture matches in the G1. But at least with Hanare's character in the final, you knew they weren't going to be doing any sort of feint at a finger poke of doom BS as they have done with HOT. Newman puts his arm up for a bump from Henare after the bell. Henare instead responds with a Maori haka, which was pretty badass. And I mean,
Hmm.
again,
Hmm.
him doing all the Maori stuff, I think is a
Works
uh,
well,
really
and
cool thread phrase.
particularly since he is beyond committed to the
Oh god,
bit, if you will.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
once you had someone spend 7 hours tattooing your mandible, like that is like
yeah.
you're like this is not just character work anymore.
No, 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 no. Yeah. Henare is trying to outpower and outclub Newman's speed early on, but he ends up matching Newman pretty well pace for pace in the opening kind of counter and reversal sequence, which you have seen at this point if you watched a lot of Newman matches. Newman is inviting Henare to show him his mana. Henare is in early control, therefore, with strike exchanges and all of the Islander headbutt spots you would expect. So Newman opts for, you guessed it, guardrail spots and crowd brawling. Newman hits a double stomp to Henare when Henare is seated in a chair. And just to be frank here, it looks like Henare takes this square in the balls, and this had to
They
suck.
even mentioned it on commentary. Yeah,
This had
I
to
would.
suck.
This is to go back to what you were saying about like, did they overuse a lot of the
Yeah.
crowd fighting spots. Yes, clearly they did, and I wish they hadn't because I think that these two did it really well.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there were some moments in this was like, oh boy, oh, wouldn't want to. Well, we'll get to another one of them
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. I
But
will.
yeah, this looked rough. I would not have wanted to take this shot. And credit to Henare for just like shaking it off. Like he was back
There
up
was
again.
one shot where you could see him like afterwards, and like that is a position that 50% of the world's population has been in at least a couple of points in their life, and we know it.
Dude, I didn't feel comfortable seeing it. And I'm not part of it.
No. It's you know that curl, you know the angle of that bend if you've been in it. I will hold off on reading too much into the possible link between this spot and some of Hanare's let's say outlandish views regarding mana that he's expressed on social media. But let's leave that aside.
I try not to think about those.
No. If you think about that or like, Shingo stuff and everything like that, it's like, yeah. Newman set some tables up outside, which obviously we're going to get back to later on. Newman is still goading Henare back into the ring, back in the ring. Newman is, still kind of goading Henare to fire up. Henare fights back into things with a Maori drop and a Berserker bomb for 2. Kate, I am assuming, as a proper movie buff, you caught Charlton's Mana hit you like a truck Berserker reference.
I occasionally think I'm so surprised to hear stuff like that. Like, what?
Between that and the Eric B and Rakim reference that we got from Chris yesterday, I was like, man, he's on a good one on this tour.
Chris Charlton has like this bottomless, these just bottomless reservoir of odd cultural references. It kind of makes me think like, imagine him and Mauro Ranallo calling a show together.
I've wondered about this. Like Chris is at least kind of feathers them in there, whereas with Mauro, it's just like call obscure rapper from 2004 because it's whatever time.
But it would get competitive, and that's what I'd really like to see. Like once one of them starts, it's like, oh,
yeah,
that's the match I want. I don't even care who's fighting because who would even notice who is fighting? All you'd be.
Oh God! Both guys are fighting on the apron, with the tables looming very close. Henare powers through a spin kick to the back of the head and a rising knee to take Newman through the tables with a rampage Uranage. The bump itself looked bad.
The bump itself, like, okay, that's a hard table hit, but the payoff was not the table hit itself. It was when Newman stood up, and it was instantaneous.
No, there's a big, like a pretty big gash and cut and like kind of scrape, I don't know, the size of a biscuit or something like that on his back. But then there is immediately this massive, like, I don't know, do you get to call it a hematoma if it bruises this quickly? Like, I don't know if you can call it a bruise when it bruises within like 2 seconds.
What this looked like to me was if you've seen people who've been in a car accident, the line that you get if you're in an accident at speed of the seatbelt that goes across, like if you hit hard, it's just like immediate like line, just red and blue and like incredibly. It's one of those things like, oh, I thought the nut shot was bad. That might be worse. I mean, of course, that's my perspective, but.
A quarter of Newman's back is just immediately this brutal shade of deep purple.
And for the rest of the match, like it's not like it was just a welt that faded. It was like, no, he's going to be seeing that tomorrow too.
Yeah. He is able to just make it back in at the 19 count, so didn't get the Oleg Bolton curse here after taking the table spot on the outside. Henare stays on him back inside with a senton for 2 and a lariat for 2. Newman counters another rampage attempt with a flying knee in a nice spot as we go to 15 minutes. They are trading forearms from their knees and then kicks as they stand. Henare still has the power advantage here as the bigger man before Newman explodes with an OSKAR and a Princess Curse for 2. There's more strikes from both men for a double down. The rampage gets Henare a 2. There's a power bomb from Henare and a Falcon arrow from Newman 20 minutes in, and Newman pulls the wrist tape off to reveal the crown tattoo. And not for the first time, the incongruence of a very proud Maori warrior fighting in an English-led
English.
empire comes to mind.
Yeah.
Henare,
It's just like the guy with the crown taking out the, oh dear.
I know, yeah. But Henare headbutts the crown and the lariat away. Newman fights out of the Ultima full Nelson again. Full Nelson, more British Imperial. Anyway, whatever. Admiral Nelson. Anyway, Newman kicks out of the hammerhead diving headbutt that Henare busts out once in a while. And then out of nowhere, Henare hits a hidden blade for a 2
Yes.
count. As we're
This-
like, okay, we're circling back to this. It's kind of the Osprey thread has led, been laid down for most of the G1, but it's coming back here. Newman kicks out of that at 2, and then 3 kiss the crown lariats from Newman set up the make way sit outside slam to cinch Newman's spot in the semis in 23 minutes and 4 seconds. I don't think that Callum Newman is winning the G1. I don't think they're going to go quite that hard with him this year. New Japan Cup title and G1 all in 1 year. But it does seem, to our point about somebody like Zack, it does seem likely that they would want someone who was very recently the IWGP champ, at least in the semifinals. I thought this was solid and hard hitting. The main thread was, Newman being tested at his physical limits by his own lieutenant. Kind of a mix of the high octane reverse and counter explosion that you come to expect with Newman, and then the Henare style endurance slugfest. I thought, the never style match that Henare is known for.
I really liked this one. I thought that, again, a lot of the fighting in the crowd, because they've overdone it so far. I think if they hadn't overdone it in the tournament that as much, I would have liked this more. But these guys, this looked like it was a stiff match, and
Yep.
not in a bitter way, but just that they were kind of pulling each other up a few levels. I think Callum Newman has shown why he has been positioned so highly in the last few months, and this was sort of the cherry on top. This was a really solid match against, as he said, his own lieutenant, where he still has to put up this huge fight because the guy is not giving him a walk. And I guess that's what. Ideally, that's kind of what I'd like to see happen with the United Empire, not to be sort of this jokey, heelish thing like
Yes.
House of Torture, but a heelish faction. I guess in the same way that AEW has done with the Death Riders, where it's just no, they're
Yes.
just tough SOBs and they can elevate each other, and that's more or less what you got here. I
Yeah.
thought really good showing from Henare, who's had a few in this G1, but yeah, ultimately it's sort of. I went into this match feeling like Callum should be the one to go through ahead of Gabe Kidd, and I
Yeah.
love Gabe, but and this match just made me feel more certain about that. So yeah, as we were saying at the beginning of the show, I think to me the right 4 people went through, because you're looking at it going okay, this is a very new group. The first, some of the first words out of Chris Charlton's mouth at the end of this match were, "We are guaranteed a first-time winner." And usually there is at least one that goes through to the semifinals who has been a previous winner. So this in itself is a bold move. It's something that maybe I don't know that they should have done 4 new guys going through a couple of years ago, but at least it sort of feels like you're
Definitely
playing
should have last
catch
year,
up
but
a bit.
yeah,
Yes, you're playing catch up a bit with where you should have been a couple of years ago, and it's been fairly effective.
Yeah. No. I'd probably go 3.5, 3 3/4 stars worth of Highland Park. I think it's kind of a coin flip, and your mileage may vary between this and Wolf Zack for kind of match of the night. Both very enjoyable, but very different matches. The one thing that I will say is that, and I don't know if this was his decision or what, but the whole shoulder injury thing never surfaced as a point of focus in any of Newman's matches, right? So much was made about that in the lead up to the tournament, and then it just never really came to much.
And it was weird because at one point in this match, like literally all of the tapes started to lift. So it's like, okay, if you're gonna like call attention to it, if you're about to do a spot, this is when. I don't know. The Clearly there was a reason for them not wanting to do that, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
whatever, whether that's
speculate.
a storytelling reason or an actual medical reason, who knows? I mean, I was kind of going into it thinking like, okay, this is one of those injuries that's kind of being played up and overstated, and it's going to allow Callum Newman to just sell, 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 and then rally, 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 and everything like that, and he'll get something out of that regardless of how hurt his shoulder actually is. And nobody really went to it, so who knows?
It
One
could
way
be
or the
just wanting to keep him more as a heel. Right, because
True
it
that. Yeah.
creates sympathy if he's fighting with an injury, if he's having so it may just be
Yeah.
guarding his position. Again, lessons learned from the past, that the line between a really good heel and the crowd treating someone as a babyface is like
Yeah.
can be remarkably thin. And
And
with
especially in
Newman, I think
Korakuen
that
as
they
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and with Newman, I think that you really do, like, it will be a fight for them to keep him as a total heel the longer he's sort of floating
That's
around
I
the
think
upper
that's
card.
why you've kind of, I mean, and I know much to many people's chagrin, I think that's why you saw like just the constant low blowing in pretty much every single one of his title matches that I know really irked a lot of those of us, kind of as I understand it, like those of us in the West and in North America just absolutely loathe the House of Torture and whatnot. Apparently, the domestic Japanese, kind of
Hmm.
smart audience just hated all of the low blowing in all of Newman's uh, main event
I
and
was I
title matches.
wasn't fond of it either.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, I
It was
just
just a
like
little bit
there
more
are other
subtle.
ways to get there.
I was like,
Yeah.
compared to House of Torture, this is not much of anything. So anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Again, these are
Fair
this
enough.
is the fried,
Yeah.
priorities and perspectives and weights
Yeah. This is
that
like this is cheating for teenagers. House of Torture is
yes.
cheating for kids. Like,
I mean, that's again to kind of circle back to a theme that, really I think this G1 has put into focus. Like so many things are going well for this company. So many things are on the ascent. You have so many guys like Oiwa and Olton and Bolton Bolton Oleg.
Olton
You know,
Bolek.
I know I'm going to be doing that for the rest of my life. And then a guy like Wolf, who it's like, yes, he is actually something you can do something with him, regardless of what happened. There are so many things working in this company, and then the things that aren't working in this company, the absolute bottom of the dregs, it would be so easy to just get rid of them. It would be so easy to
The
just, we
thing
could have it all, we really could.
the
Oscar's
thing
right.
that they need now, and the you hopefully they'll get there, but they've taken so long to build up the new top of the card guys that it's like you've lost all of the guys who were your big draws. So yeah, this is like an emergency thing. Like, okay, you have to get all of these guys up. These are the ones who need to be able to main event the Tokyo Dome. But in the gap between them and most of the like a large number of others, like, okay, now you've got your top of the card guys more or less, like that's working. You desperately need a mid card, because
Yes.
that is like there is such a gulf between the likes of Tsuji and Oiwa, and even like Uemura, even though I don't think he's like the finished product yet, but like the gap between that and House of Torture,
Yeah.
like it's too much. Like
Yeah.
you need credible mid-level title challengers, and some of us think that that's maybe where Shota Umino should be slotted. They
Yeah.
might have
Yep.
different ideas.
That's also why Tai
But
Chi should have been in this tournament rather
yeah,
than,
exactly.
Jake Lee or
And
Great O'Con, I would say. But,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, and you do have like a lot of the time that that role is going to be played by some of your older guys, but you need
Yeah.
young guys in your mid card as well, and that's the next challenge. Okay,
And
we've
so
got the
many
top sorted. We need the mid card guys.
and given that it's always going to be separation of church and state in terms of the heavyweights and juniors, the fact that
Mm,
so many of the trainees, both the current crop of young lions and a lot of the guys who are still on excursion, so many of those guys are junior heavyweights, I think
hmm.
also is gonna they're gonna have to rethink this. And
Yeah.
it's going to involve a lot of structural issues
I
that
mean,
the company
they
has been
do they
putting
do
off
need
booking
junior
wise.
guys. Like Kosi
Oh
Fujita
yeah,
can
yeah,
only
yeah.
do so much, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
But they've got a glut of them. They've got a glut of them
yeah.
compared to, as you're sort of saying, an emergent younger uh heavyweight mid card. And obviously like you can have your Gotos and your Zacks as they kind of get scaled back, and
Mhm.
Tai Chi's fleshing
Well,
that
and
out. But
you can have guys like Gabe Kidd come in and do sort of runs with the belt from outside. They'll have access to those people, but they can't rely on them for week in week out programming. And that's what you need. Like your big stars will always be the draws, but a lot of times the decision on whether or not to go to a show is okay. Well, what are the other matches that I'm going to see? Because and it's okay. You get to work on
yep,
that.
yep, yep.
You got your top guys sorted. Now do the next tier, which can be more difficult because no one gets into wrestling to be a mid card guy.
No, no, but it's there's a lot of things working in this company, and the things that need addressing are things that are achievable, that are doable. But again, I think they just require, it requires kind of a regime change, and or at least a
Hmm.
real rethinking
I
of
would also
how.
say it requires some movement within the factions too.
Yep.
Like to me, you have some goodwill now attached to Sonata. Get him away from House of Torture. Maybe put Great Okan with House of Torture. Like just sort of let's just ghettoize all of that stuff in one place. And yeah, like there are the there are other places they can draw from like to sign new talent, but
Yeah,
yeah.
there's still kind of a couple of
Hmm.
names, of free agent names and whatnot, that have been loosely attached to the company. Whether or not anything comes of that, we will see. Rounding things off here, back in the ring after cinching his spot, Newman on the mic acknowledges that Henare is tough. He's the scariest person he's ever met, but this win proves why he's the leader of the United Empire. He doesn't know where Henare's loyalties lie, and if they are that prick with that prick in All Elite, be aware that he is the boss in Japan. So if the Hidden Blade was not enough, we're really underlining this. Uh,
Hmm.
Backstage, Newman says that
Where is
he
that
is.
match happening? Is it at Wrestle Kingdom?
You know,
Like, do they
I
delay it till then? The Osprey versus
I think
Newman.
so. I think so. I think you have that. It won't be for the title. The title will not be involved in that. I don't know if they would want to have Newman challenge for the AEW title at that point. I think I sure. I don't
Well,
know how
see,
much
the thing
value there is
is
in that, but
that in that match, I feel like Newman has to win. Like that's what you want. So
yep,
then,
yep.
like, I don't know if you're Tony. Do you want your? I don't think Osprey would have a trouble taking the
Oh,
loss. But
Osprey
if you're
would not.
Tony,
But yeah,
like,
no,
dude,
Tony's no,
like,
no, no,
but
no, no, no.
yeah,
No, I don't think
I don't know in his position if I'd want my my world champion
no.
taking a loss unless like I guess if there were shenanigans involved and that's a possibility, but
But do you really want
eh.
Newman? Have like how much does a dirty win over Osprey give Newman? Back in New Japan, I don't know. Um, but yeah, no, one way or the other, this is something that Newman is going to continue to pick up with backstage. He says he's put himself through so much of this tour with a chip on his shoulder, and at Ryogoku, the grip will do what everyone has: make way for the prince and kiss the crown. He wonders backstage if his shoulder has been reseparated from all of the throws he took from Aaron Wolf, but he's going to beat that C word with the shit haircut, referring to Iwa. And again, I love the mullet. It's the sign of somebody who either has opinions
It's
about a Meatmix Records or loves Dawkins, and either way,
I
I
don't
am
know.
there for it.
I'm looking at that. It's not just the cut to me, but the sort of the 2004 scene dye job like
Oh yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. The layered
that
angular.
is
Oh
a
yeah,
statement. Yes,
yeah,
bringing the
yeah.
stripes back.
Yeah, but he says he's going to beat Oiwa, then whoever is in the finals, become the youngest ever G1 winner, get his title back, and then once he has that Osprey, he'll prove that he's the top gaijin in the world. So yeah, the Osprey thread has been left out of a lot of New Japan promos and whatnot, but obviously that is very much going to be the focus. And again, I don't think Newman is winning the G1, so that is obviously going to be his focus and his program coming out of
I
all of this.
I wonder though too. Like, so who do you see being the final? Like, who are the final two? Newman's not winning, but who are the two that are in the
I
final?
think, given that, because maybe this is just sentimentality on my part or whatever, but I do see Oiwa versus Uemura in the finals. I think that it's not just me. I think the general reception to that match, as I understand it,
Yes.
domestically, and on commentary and whatnot,
The fact that we're
was so
talking about it
strong.
a year later, it's
Yeah,
and the,
a- and I
it's
think it's a
held
real
as the
case.
standard. Yeah.
I think it's a real case of like iron sharpens iron in terms of two
Mhm.
of your younger guys. Both of them will benefit from that high profile, spot. And I don't think there's a wrong decision coming out of that. The only question is whether or not they are going to kind of, with Suji bringing the V4 back, are we going to kind of go back to the tradition of the G1 actually being paid off at the Dome and rather than at KOPW or wherever else it might be? That is where my preference would lie personally. I think there's, again, to our points about mid card, you have to find ways of doing other things with your
Yeah.
champion
The
in the time
challenge
between. But
the challenge with the G1 winner getting to the dome is always one of time. Like you have to like okay, you're gonna have that you're gonna have this and then you're gonna go through the entire fall, you're gonna go through like World Tag League and everything else, but you have to this has to seem like a hot program at the end of it. And I think the last couple of years the problem has been, is this really hot enough to just burn right through all of this?
Well, the
So
problem last year was that on the day of the G1 final, I'm looking at the winner and saying, this winner and this G1 winner and this G1 champ, neither of these people are going to be like involved in, the tournament main event necessarily, right? Like, or excuse me, that was the year before that. Um, the fact that you've had like two entirely different guys in the Wrestle Kingdom main event than who were the champ and G1 winner, you know, we can't. I think that diminishes all of the entire G1. Frankly, is
absolutely, no,
is
I
is
agree
my
with you. I
yep,
agree with
yep,
you.
yep,
So it's
yep.
just, but then it's a question of like, okay, so how do you book this so that it continues to feel like a powerful, like a top tier match with guys who are still, I would say, unproven commodities in terms of
Yeah,
their
no,
ability to draw an audience. Like this is something that you need to think through.
yep. And it's going to be one way or the other. It's going to be a bit of a gamble. You're obviously, you can't even put in mind, this year's Tokyo Dome attendance. That's, that is so far out of reach. You can't even begin to think about comparing yourself to that. I do think I would suggest that the year by year attendance comparisons for this year's G1, even with Tanahashi on board last year's G1, the fact that they stayed mostly at
Flat,
par
yeah,
and so in
yeah,
some cases, like yesterday, bumped up by 300, that says something, right? You're
yes.
going to have to rip the band-aid off. You are going to take a hit at the dome.
Well,
I
it's
don't know it's going to be
it's
as brutal as they're worried it's going to be.
I think that yeah, you're basically now dealing with sort of Tanahashi inflation. The fact that you're equal actually means you're ahead because he
Yes.
was a certain like he was a good chunk of the draw last year. So staying the same is a win. And I think that I'm sure they know that. Like I'm sure that they anticipate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, the number the dome will be lower. I think maybe you compare it to a couple of years ago and then go for that. Because yeah, like this is like last year you had Tanahashi versus Okada. Like I don't think it was again
Yeah.
I think Okada was a factor there too. Like they certainly moved some tickets based on him making his one-time return, but
Yep.
we'll
Yep.
see.
Yep. Yep.
We'll see.
All right, just for the sake of it here, given that the blocks are all finished off, why don't we take one final look at the block standings for this year's G1? In the A, you have Yota Tsuji in first with 12 points, Ryohei Oiwa in second at 12 points, Konosuke Takeshita at 12 points, but out of contention. Oleg in fourth with 10. You got a cluster of Goto, Shingo, Sanada, and Yuto Ice with 8. And then the absolute scum of the earth, Jake Lee and Great Khan, right at the bottom where they deserve to be with 6 points. I had to watch all these matches. I'm going to keep bearing these guys for as long as I have to. Over in the B block in first place, it is um sorry, it's Callum Newman in first place with 12 and Yuya Uemura in second place with 12. Gabe Kidd also with 12, but like Takeshita out of contention due to the tie breaks. You got Drilla, Zack, and Narita all with 10. Henare, Aaron Wolf, and OSKAR in a much more tightly contested block than the A block. Henare, Wolf, and OSKAR all have 8. And then Gabe Kidd's sentimental favorite, Shota Umino, of course, with 0 points. And again, whatever we are looking at with the semifinals here, we do have to sort of potentially, if we're trying to figure out what was supposed to happen or whatnot, the Umino asterisk does have to be attached to all of this. But tomorrow it will be, or excuse me, on Saturday, not tomorrow, on Saturday, it will be Callum Newman versus Ryohei Oiwa and Yuya Uemura versus Yota Tsuji in Ryogoku. Karen and John will be giving you a full review of that card. That card will also, of course, feature the retirement match of Hiroyoshi Tenzan taking on his longtime bestie and occasional rival, Satoshi Kojima. I don't think we really can expect too much in terms of work rate in that. Obviously, Tenzan hasn't wrestled a match in a year and a half effectively at this point. But, you know, this is they've already sold out Ryogoku on the basis of this retirement. It's a big one. It'll be a sentimental, all about the vibes sort of retirement. One that's overdue perhaps, but at least one that is going out with the right opponent. Absolutely, for Tenzan. So I am looking forward to that just out of pure sentimentality and history there. Then on Sunday, WH Park, Karen, and myself will be handling the finals of the G1 tournament, with whichever two of those 4 finalists we have going into the finals on Sunday. Again, those shows on Saturday and Sunday and so much more are all going to be available on the Post Wrestling Cafe. So if you are not a member, head on over to Post Wrestling Cafe to get access to all of those. Kate, like you said off of the top, you and I will be reuniting in a little over a week's time for that ROH card. Is there anything else that you want to let folks know about as we get out of here?
Well, if you are a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, you can also find me weekly. I host Collision Course with a sort of rotating series of guest hosts, which occasionally includes you. This week it will be Ray Williams, who you may know from the Nubian Wrestling Advocates, and you said we'll be in the following Friday to talk about ROH. This is my last date, obviously, on the G1 coverage, Bruce. I'm very glad that we got to do this a couple of times. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to be able to talk New Japan with you as well. As you said, occasionally getting to talk AEW with you. So, on behalf of Kate from Montreal, I have been Bruce Lord. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Take care.